How are you? How's it going? Welcome. Let's get to the news about what's happening in the world. A big greeting to those who are just arriving, Raul, Israel, Dante, to the whole community that's coming in. Leave your comment, give us a hand with a like, share this around while we bring you the news about what's happening in the world. Iran is off to a bad start today as it's attacking NATO again. A day after Turkey told them, "We're not going to give you a second chance," they attack again, also with cluster bombs. They're attacking the Gulf countries, and obviously there's also an attack being launched against Israel. Well, let's discuss this in detail. Also, what is the response from the United States? What is the response from Israel? And what is the response from the Gulf countries? They have also obviously been trying to weaken this regime, and this has clearly caused a huge shift by attempting to attack the oil companies. So, what happened in Bahrain today, by the way? How was the price of oil brought down? To reduce how much it was skyrocketing, right? Also, well, we have to talk about the Europe factor, but we have to start with this image. Let's start with an image. Well, it's really striking. Bahrain, according to reports, the state oil company of Bahrain, BAPCO, has declared force majeure for shipments. After, well, right now they're having this problem. The only refinery that Bahrain has, by the way, is now on fire. This, well, obviously it's partly, not entirely of course, but it's an attack launched by Iran, once again, against Gulf countries. When, well, every day they promise there won't be any more attacks, and they keep repeating it, and this hasn't stopped, and patience is running out. From these countries, although there are already reports that they might be starting operations, they haven't done so officially yet. But could there be a declaration of war from these countries against Iran? This could happen, but so far it hasn't happened yet. Now there's also this image posted by Aurora Intel where they show, well, these munitions, what's back there? This is inside Israel. Back there, that explosion, that small explosion. They are munitions, obviously very dangerous. Yes, they are those missiles that open up, release submunitions. And it's very, let's say, it wouldn't be possible, let's say, to use the Iron Shield system, nor the Iron Beam, nor the other one, nor the Arrow 3. Because these are, imagine, each missile releases a bunch of little balls. It can be from hundreds of little balls or submunitions, right? Between 90 and 600 munitions, submunitions, depending on the type of warhead. So what it does is that it falls in different places and it can cause an explosion, it can cause fires or, that kind of thing. That's why in Israel, when there's an attack, people are told to go into shelters. Because obviously, there can also be risks in that sense. Also, well, another image, another security camera that shows this situation where you can see this kind of movement. Now, this is from yesterday, right? This is from yesterday, according to what I'm seeing there, a date from the Munitions attacks. What they do show, and what stands out, according to the Turks and NATO themselves, is that they managed to intercept another missile. What does the statement say, and what has been happening? Let's see. Today, we're talking about March. Today, March 9th, another ballistic missile is launched against Turkey. And obviously, this is against NATO. I mean, how many attacks have there already been against NATO from Iran? If it turned out that Iran's intention is nothing more than to extend the conflict, to prolong it, and, well, now, with the new leadership, it was extremely important to see how their first day of operation would go. From Mojtaba to Khamenei, right? Well, we're seeing it now. He was just being elected and there were already attacks on Israel. After that, there were attacks on the Gulf countries, but now they're attacking Turkey again. According to reports, they intercepted another ballistic missile launched from Iran after the projectile entered Turkish airspace. It was shot down there by NATO's defense systems. The Turkish defense minister confirmed that the missile was destroyed before impact, although the intercepted fragments fell in the city of Gaziantep in the south of the country. So far, no casualties have been reported, but the incident marks an extremely delicate moment. Just yesterday, Turkey itself was saying, be careful if they attack again, because there won't be a second chance, they said yesterday. No, well, we understand that it could have been a mistake, so to speak, not an incident, so to speak, which obviously wasn't a mistake. But a second ballistic missile against a NATO country? Watch out for this. Turkey itself reacted with a warning yesterday that threatened Iranian territory, but today it assured. They claim they could respond to these attacks, although they don't confirm it. Obviously, Turkey summoned the Iranian ambassador to formally protest the launch of this missile. The Turkish foreign minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hakan Fidan, warned Tehran to avoid a regional escalation that could destabilize the entire Middle East. Since then, Iran has been attacking not only Israel but also Azerbaijan and several Gulf states, expanding the conflict. Since that warning was given in that meeting with the ambassador, hace algunos días, ¿no? Well, it basically didn't serve any purpose. I wouldn't be surprised if, at any moment now, they officially announced the break between Turkey and Iran. Let's see what happens, but that's a huge issue right now. So, what's going on with the reactions from the United States? Let's listen to what Marco Rubio has to say.
This mission is clear, and it's important to keep reminding the American people why it is that the largest army in the history of the world is involved in this operation. The objective is to destroy this regime's ability to launch missiles, both by destroying their missiles and launchers, as well as destroying the factories that make these missiles and destroying their navy. We all see the threat that this clerical regime poses to the region and the world. They are trying to hold the world hostage, they are attacking their neighbors, they are attacking neighboring countries, their energy infrastructure, their civilian population, they are attacking embassies. This is a terrorist government, this is a terrorist regime, and we are seeing that they carry out terrorism using elements of a nation state, using weapons like missiles and one-way attack drones. And the goal of this mission is to destroy their ability to keep doing that, and we are well on our way to achieving that goal. Every day, with abundant, overwhelming force, with overwhelming precision. The Army, the United States Army, the men and women in uniform are carrying out an extraordinary operation. There aren't many cameras down there covering what they're doing, unlike some of the other footage you might see from some nearby cities and capitals. But I want everyone to know that your army is fulfilling its duty, and every day, this regime in Iran has fewer missiles, fewer launchers, its factories are operating less, and its navy is being annihilated. The world will be safer and better once this mission is accomplished.
Well, that's the message that Marco Rubio was giving, in which he has been appearing in United States media. Obviously, an international media, where he insists tries to remind United States citizens about this, especially because there are very large sectors of the population that simply do not agree with this conflict. And this is even within Republican sectors who simply don't agree with the conflict, especially considering that it could be prolonged. Today there was this increase in prices. Let's see this increase in oil prices. There it is. Brent oil, which would have soared to about $113, $114 at one point. And then the oil started to drop. Why? Well, the European countries started to use their reserves. The European countries used their reserves, but that's not the reason why the oil arrived. The thing is, well, I think this European solution was correct so that oil wouldn't skyrocket so quickly. Let's see how sustainable it is over a longer period of time. Especially considering that the Iranians don't seem to want to decrease the attacks, there doesn't seem to be an agreement at the moment. At least the price has already dropped, it's already at $96. Yes, and that, well, really limits the possibility of prices skyrocketing. That's very good news, even though yesterday, Sunday, things looked really bad, right? Honestly, let's move on to other details, to other reports. Also very interesting about what's happening in the world. Huge. Greetings to Jose Dominguez, my namesake, Jose. How have you been? Heritage, hello Raul. What is high definition greetings? Very good. Well, to the whole community, go ahead and leave your comment. Let's not go to the information about what's happening in the world. Let's see what's going on. Pay attention to this topic. Look at what's happening. In the United States, it is reported that the plane known as the Doomsday Plane is already being sent. What is this plane about? What's going on? Well, let's get into the details. This plane is basically a flying command center for situations of war or major conflicts. This plane had not yet been sent to the Iran area, and the fact that they are sending it now obviously creates tensions. How have you been? Good morning, very good here to the community. Look, this is the intelligence plane, the E-6B Mercury exactly. It left from Tinker Air Force Base and is heading toward the Persian Gulf. According to reports, this plane is known as the Doomsday Plane. See? It is designed to ensure that the United States can maintain communications with its nuclear forces, especially submarines and ballistic missiles. That's what it's made for. Now the question is, why is it being sent? What is the mission it is going to carry out in that country, obviously? To start attacking with submarines, what's going to happen? I mean, it's obviously a huge issue, but it's a plane that seeks to have the ability to communicate even with nuclear weapons at any time in a wartime situation. Watch out for that issue, and watch out for that plane too. Well, this movement is being observed. This is a B-52. According to reports from the United Kingdom, or rather, in the United Kingdom, this is a United States B-52. And well, these are the movements that will be observed. Surely there will be more soon. What's happening in that regard? Well, there are several movements that catch the eye. For example, this thing right here. Obviously, it's a little blurred. That's something added by those who share it, who say it's from the Israeli Ministry of Defense, not the one who would have shared this image, obviously, on their social media. They claim that around 50 cargo planes have arrived. 50 cargo planes that were carrying approximately 1,000 tons of weapons, equipment, and ammunition have landed. This is in Israel for the operations they call Roaring Lion or also Epic Fury. This conflict has these two names, Roaring Lion and Epic Fury. Well, trailers are arriving to bring more ammunition. That, well, also shows where this conflict we're seeing is obviously heading. Here, let's get into the details, right? This is another striking image. An Iranian warship was destroyed. This happened at the Bandar el-Asian dock, inside its own dock. By the way, they weren't going out on a mission. They were just there at their dock. And well, this one had been destroyed. It could possibly be, let's say, this ship called Qasem Soleimani in honor of that figure who was eliminated. By the way, during Trump's first term, Soleimani at that time was the number 2 in Iran's military. And that caused the deal they had since Obama's time regarding the nuclear issue to be broken. That agreement, the United States and Iran had to be able to review what they were doing with the matter. Obviously, all of these are attacks, but they are also symbols of a conflict in which the military infrastructure is what they're targeting. Let's say, to disappear, so to speak, from the United States and Israel toward Iran. In other words, the military part, that strength that the regime claimed or boasted about, well, they're trying to weaken it as much as possible. Now, this war is not about large military infrastructure. Clearly, most of that has already been destroyed. This is about drones, cheap drones, and economic strategy. That's what this conflict is about from the point of view of what they're likely to do, and we've already seen it, right? To attack this very place. And create what yesterday was seen as a scare that was contained by Europe? I mean, in the end, the cost right now is for Europe, in the sense that, well, Europe is the one that put that, let's say, well, that money at the end of the day, not that oil at the end of the day. Let's discuss the details of this situation, but I just want to ask a small favor from the community that's here live, helping out, sharing, liking, all of that really helps a lot so we can keep commenting. Well, just trying to observe what's happening in the world. How are you, Marcos? Greetings, Luis Garcia, to the whole community that's joining us, Boston, Massachusetts, and to the entire community. Thank you so much for what's happening, for what you all are commenting here. Greetings also to Jose, to Luis Garcia. Awesome, he says. Gas prices went up in Fort Myers, Florida from 3.60. The gallon, he says, will go down. He doesn't say, let's hope, not that it will go down now. Greetings, how are you? What? Much more. Very interesting right from the start. What's happening with the Gulf countries? What's also happening with these warheads of racism that have been going off? Iran? Several interesting things are happening there. But before anything else, I would like to play you this audio, this video, and audio already dubbed into Spanish. This is a message delivered by one of the characters. Personajes. One of the most visible Iranians lately. Pay attention to what this military figure, let's say from the Revolutionary Guard, says. Let's listen. Thank you.
It is expected that the governments of Islamic countries will warn the criminal United States and the savage Zionist regime as soon as possible, so that they refrain from carrying out such cowardly and inhumane actions in order to prevent the flames of fire and war from spreading even further. Otherwise, similar actions will be carried out in the region, and let's see if they can handle the price of oil above $200 per barrel. Keep playing this game.
Well, that's the warning. It's not nice to play with fear, with the worry that this will cause a price surge. No, they're already discussing $200 per barrel just as the experts have said or are saying. For example, today in the morning at 5 a.m., we broadcasted a small report about what would happen if oil goes up to 200. There was a report, for example, from JP Morgan and others warning that, well, not just to 200, it could even go up to $300. That, let's hope, you never know, but they have to analyze the risks. Obviously, that's what these financial analyses are often about. So, what they're warning is that this increase, this rise, imagine up to $300, well, it has a direct effect on global inflation. And that's the way, let's say, of operating that Iran wants to use right now. And in the end, it's strategy against strategy. I mean, in the end, they're strategies. And we have to analyze what could happen in one case, what could happen in the other, and how it could be reversed. Because the fact that Europe was able to reverse the price so quickly, as soon as they announced it, the price had already dropped by $14. Yes, and right now the price has already dropped by more than $14. So it's important that this situation was contained, right? When we started the live stream, we saw the following. Look. When we started the live stream, we started with this image from Bahrain, not from this refinery that was shaved by Iran. But after this, we saw this image, not an image where you could see this attack. With a cluster munition, Iran launches another attack with these warheads with cluster munitions, cluster bombs. Let's go into the details of what is known. Information: the Iranian missile carries a cluster munition warhead. It struck on Monday in the center, that is today, in the center of Israel. Unfortunately, as is known, this has already caused 2 serious injuries and, according to reports, also a person who has lost their life. Be careful with this, because it was from ammunition. It spreads to different points. I'm not saying exactly this one, but one of those ammunitions may have caused this impact. Based on Israeli authorities' reports, the missile would have been launched with a cluster warhead that hit 6 different locations. That's what I'm telling you, it spreads out. That's what makes this type of attack dangerous. And for the defense systems, well, it's very difficult. I mean, to begin with, a missile that attacks another missile, because that's the defense system. Basically, the Iron Shield, the Iron Dome, and all of that are missiles shooting at other missiles. A missile comes in and another missile intercepts it. And there's already an information algorithm that detects when it launches. And it says, well, it's going to reach this point, and that's where they fire. The thing is, when the shot is about to arrive, it opens up and releases the submunition, so you can't stop it. The submunition reached the following places: Yehud or Yehuda, Holon, and Bat Yam. Those are the areas where the submunition was detected falling. Yes, well, obviously this resulted in 1 person dying and 2 others being injured. According to the statement from the commander of the Tel Aviv district, police officer Chaim Zargarov, he is the one who commented on this situation. The official warns that the 2 critically injured people were recorded at the 2 main sites. They were people who had not entered their shelter or safe room. The incident could have ended with only material damage if they had followed that instruction. That's why they tell you to get into your shelter. If they had been in their shelters, this wouldn't have happened to them. A very tough subject, but it's also part of what people are experiencing in the conflict. According to the reports, there was a construction site in Yehud, and there were 2 workers around 40 years old who were hit by that shrapnel. The ammunition can contain explosives, it can contain incendiary material to start fires in certain places, or it can contain shrapnel. So that makes it very dangerous. Okay. Because the ammunition falls in different places and then gets activated, but then there's another percentage between 5 and 30%. The ammunition that remains inactive, meaning it stays dormant and doesn't activate when it falls. Some ammunition sometimes comes with something like little wings, so to speak, not that they're going to fly or anything. No, it's just that those little wing-like things make the ammunition fall more slowly. Basically, it's like they have parachutes. In fact, there are some types of ammunition that actually have little parachutes too, so they fall gently and then turn into mines. I mean, in what sense? Like if a car or a person suddenly passes by? These, for example, greatly impact the countryside. They're dropped in rural or agricultural areas, and then the owner, worker, tractor, or someone else ends up hitting them. Suddenly, they step on one and it explodes. So they have a long-lasting impact in that sense. In this case, it's not known. There's no information about what type of warheads they are, or rather, what type of ammunition. How many munitions are estimated to have come out of there? All these kinds of things, well, those are details that we'll get to know over time. But, well, it's a problem, obviously, in the midst of all this conflict, because the strategies keep adapting to the conflict. I mean, the strategies are made with a hypothetical situation in mind. But then, once it happens, it's constant change, and we all go along. It's reaction and reaction, reaction and reaction. I mean, they're basically reacting all the time. Another thing that also draws attention today is what happened with the attacks on the Gulf countries. Let's go into the details of what is known about those attacks, right? I mean, that's another one of the waves that drew attention today. During the early hours of today, Monday, March 9th, Iran launched a new wave of drones and missiles against neighboring countries. Gulf countries, countries that are in this famous Persian Gulf, in this area. But also, as you well know, 20%, a fifth of the world's oil comes from there. Yeah. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain activated their air defense systems after detecting multiple projectiles coming from Iranian territory. Qatar's forces confirmed the interception of at least 1 missile that was targeting to be attacking, especially tourist areas or zones related to refineries. United Arab Emirates military authorities reported that their defenses were responding to incoming threats from Iranian drones and missiles. Kuwait also reported that during the night, the National Guard of that country confirmed the destruction of a drone before it reached its target. And the case that attracted the most attention is that of Saudi Arabia, where its defenses intercepted 2 ballistic missiles aimed at the airbase. Prince Sultan, a military facility of the same Arabs in the southern area of Riyadh. I don't know at what point, but sooner or later this seems like it's going to lead to a larger war. These countries have been or are still being very patient up to now, but this could obviously escalate at some point. It's striking that war hasn't been declared, nor has a formal attack been launched by those countries. They're trying to contain this as much as possible. The conflict is currently having an impact on the markets. But anyway, today it was announced. There it is. And we're seeing it. It was announced. And this brought calm to the markets. Europe announced it. We're going to release the reserves. Yes, the Europeans made this announcement, and well, that really helped things calm down a lot. On one hand, what is Iran trying to achieve with all this? What is the approach? Let's go to the solution first. What did Europe do about this issue? The G7 countries have been evaluating how they are going to use reserves to stop the rise in oil prices. The purpose of this extraordinary meeting is to analyze mechanisms to mitigate the impact of the increase in crude oil prices, which have reached $114. Yes, now it has dropped to $95 at this moment as well. And it seems like it's still going down. So, 96, 95, that's about where it will be. But still, apparently, as this chart shows, it seems that the trend is going to be for the price to go down, at least for now. Obviously, the Iranians can't be liking this at all, because their strategy was exactly the opposite. Look, G7 finance ministers agreed to hold an emergency meeting today in New York to assess the release, or the joint release. They are going to release strategic oil through the International Energy Agency. The International Energy Agency, which is an intergovernmental organization. Just with this announcement, the price dropped to these levels. It was extremely important to make an announcement like this. And in Japan, they have reserves for about a year, roughly speaking. The United States also has a lot of reserves. Europe has reserves. Is it possible to use the reserves in these times? That's what the reserves are for. Precisely, they're meant to prevent this kind of manipulation, where a country, in this case Iran, does this. So let's say, they're going to stop, they're going to block the oil in some way, and with this, create a very serious international impact now. At least that's what's happening right now, isn't it? That's the reaction. And apparently, at least in the price, it shows that it's working. The executive director of the International Energy Agency is named Fatih Birol. He would be participating in this discussion that will be taking place in the United States. We'll see what the details are, what they're going to say. In the meantime, I'd like us to see what this spokesperson has to say. Yes, the one who is the spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry, right? It's not Abbas Aragashi, but he is the spokesperson. Let's hear what he says.
Look, we have emphasized that with all countries, both in the region and neighboring countries, we insist on that. We want to maintain a relationship based on good neighborliness and friendship. For us, continuing a friendly relationship based on mutual respect, including respect for national sovereignty and the territorial integrity of all countries, is a fundamental principle. However, when Iran is being attacked from the territory of countries in the region, when their territory is being misused to attack Iranian citizens or to set fire to Iranian property, according to international law, there is a principle, an inherent right, so naturally we must respond. Our defense should in no way be interpreted as hostility toward any of the countries in the region. Regarding the Republic of Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Cyprus that you mentioned, Colombia, the General Staff of the Armed Forces declared it explicitly and officially that such projectiles have not been launched from Iran nor by our military forces. Did you see the thing about Cyprus? Even the official British authorities confirmed that such an event did not occur. We have always warned about false flag operations. Let's not forget that there is a malicious regime in the region which has a long history with this kind of actions.
Well, look, the point is to blame, right? Israel or the United States, that's what he's implying. He doesn't say false flag attacks. And well, that's how it ended. The point is that what the spokesperson doesn't know is that you can trace where the attack originated from using satellites. And well, there is one attack that is indeed strange. It's not clear where it came from, which is the one in Cyprus. That one is still being investigated. By the way, wasn't it reported that it wasn't launched from Iran? No, it wasn't Iran. It could be Iran, but maybe from the sea or some other area. But it's not known. It's something that's being investigated. Where did the attack come from? But let's keep listening. Look at the following.
The case of Avalon or Operation Susanna in 1954 in Egypt is a well-known example of how the Zionist regime tried, through acts of sabotage, to try to create divisions between several countries. Recently, it has also been reported that sabotage operations were being carried out in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Therefore, we invite all countries to act with caution and precision before making any judgments about the events taking place in the region.
Well, that's the warning. That's the report given by the Iranian spokesperson himself, in which basically the idea is to say we weren't the ones. That's the point. It's perfectly possible to trace where the attacks come from through satellites. And in that sense, there's no doubt whether they come from Iran or from another area. Well, that will be seen over time. But immediately, the one from Cyprus was the one that caught attention. But so far, the ones that have been seen, especially the attacks toward Turkey, are ballistic missiles that have Iranian construction. So, there's really no doubt about that, but we'll see. We'll see how this issue develops, and we'll keep talking about these details. But anyway, that's the perspective coming from Iran. He's the spokesperson for the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's strange that Abbas Saragasi didn't appear this time. Normally, he's the one who comes out to give these reports. It's curious that this time it's not Abbas Saragasi who says it, but rather his spokesperson. It's a topic that obviously draws attention. Well, quickly, a few comments. Before we leave, we'll be back later with another update, he says. Possibly there won't be Formula. Hey, surely not, surely, but the Tennis Open and Formula One are difficult. I mean, these are international events that used to be held either in the Emirates or in Saudi Arabia. But, well, obviously that's how it is. Nico, I think they're going to be suspended. Well, the big question, there won't be a World Cup. What's going to happen with the World Cup? There's already a notice from the Iraq national team. For example, they want to postpone their playoff game, which I think is here in Mexico. They want to postpone it to another date. We know that things are getting a little weird. By the way, speaking of soccer, which we don't usually do here, but let's say when it's an international topic, we do. The women's soccer team, you know, they had the issue where the players decided to sing the Iranian national anthem as a form of protest. But then Iranians started appearing on television saying they were traitors and this and that, and it got really intense. And at the next game, they came out singing the anthem. The next game, no. And well, they had these faces very, I would say, honestly scared. Later, they were seen on a bus, a team transport bus, and one of them was making signs asking for help. No, that went pretty viral. Now it's known that 5 players from the women's national team allegedly escaped and are now under police protection. I mean, let's see, at least 5 of them are going to be, they're going to get out. 5 players from the national soccer team fled with their team in Australia and are currently under the protection of the Australian police amid security concerns. 5 members of the women's soccer team left the team's hotel in Australia and are safe under police custody, according to reports in that country. No. The players who were competing in the Women's Asian Cup in Australia, they are now, well, the center of attention. And they are asking, well, for all of them to be released. For them to be allowed to live there in Australia, all of them with everything. And what about the coach? Because, well, they know that going back to their country is going to be complicated. It's going to be dangerous. Let's say, no, what they're asking for, they'll be told, well, is for them to be detained. It's just that these people, let's say, are calling them all sorts of things, right? So you can imagine the situation, right? Well, listen, we'll keep talking and chatting in a bit. Ha ha ha. The nonsense this guy says. Well, Hernan Colo, greetings, my friend. Your comments are always contributing, right? Great. Greetings, Checho Pintor. Greetings, Gabriel, to the whole community. Jorge, how have you been in Peru? He says. We have problems with a broken gas pipeline for 7 days now. A terrible time for us, says Jorge. Hey, Jorge, how are things going over there? Tell us. Leave us your comment. We see that in Iran they have a lot of reports and everything. But then what we see here in Peru, in Colombia, maybe isn't as well known. I keep investigating and asking our community in Peru, Colombia, Argentina, and beyond, well, how things are going, and we try to observe, to analyze what's happening. What we see from here is that Peru is a country that has been standing out in certain economic areas despite its constant political crises. That gets a lot of attention, doesn't it? One day it trades with China, the next with the United States. And it has diversified, at least that's what I see from here, it has diversified its risk in economic matters and is starting to stand out. Many topics, huh? This topic really catches our attention. Patri, how are you? Big hug, hope you're well. Adaiso, how have you been? Well, for the World Cup, Iran is in doubt. I mean, just imagine. I mean, there it is, the entry, Iran, Iraq. Well, it's about the playoffs, not the playoffs, which is being officially requested. Formally, they've already asked Federación Internacional de Football Association for a little more time for that game. Well, I mean, little things are happening here and there. And in one of those, the big question is it going to happen or not? Is the World Cup going to happen or not? Or are there going to be changes? Or what's going to happen? Because this is, besides, a more complex World Cup than usual, because of the number of matches it's going to have, because of the number of countries that are going to play, unlike other times, right? And it's also going to be a moment of global exposure, like these events always are. A moment when a country's security is really put on display, it's really exposed. Well, the organization, in theory, shows how good things are supposed to be. All of that, well, is going to be closely watched, right? Ada Aizu says. And most likely the two F1 dates Formula 1 will be suspended or moved to another location. Greetings, Ada. How have you been? Very good, Jorge. How's Mayu? Koluna, good afternoon, Wilkoff. Greetings. Well, they say, where will they go or not go? That's a good question. Let's move on to other matters. In a little while, we'll be back with another update on what's happening in the world. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in a little while.